Tom Kline, welcome. It's so glad to have you here at the F&I Master Series Forum, The Digital Age. And I got to tell you, you've had some technical difficulties being in Florida. So I'm just telling you guys, hey, if Tom is in and out, he's just having some technical difficulties. But okay, to get this started, I share your background and what you've been doing so everyone has a better idea what you do.
A better vantage point, right?
Sure.
Well, thanks for having me, Becky. It's great to be here. I am Tom Kline. So my family started in the car business back in 1925. So I am a third generation car guy. Actually, my family's been in the business almost 100 years, and the country is only, 250 years old. So 40% of the age of the country is how long we've been in the car business. So I was a dealership owner for 30 years, and we sold our stores in December of 2019. And I started my consulting business right after that. And I focus on risk mitigation for dealers. So I try to help a dealer make sure the money they make is the money they keep. And I keep everybody out of the dealer's pocket. And that involves compliance. It involves risk transference. So what can we do to either have the insurance company pick up a claim, or can we put a policy or a procedure in place to pick up a claim? And then dispute resolution. So that's what I call kind of the three legs of the stool, which is compliance, risk transference, and dispute resolution.
Well, I bet that keeps you pretty busy with your dealers, I must say, especially, with these updates going on with the Gramm Leach Bliley Act, the FTC Gramm Leach Bliley Act. Now, we've had some speakers on, especially Hudson and Cook, as well as James Lawrence, and they're talking about some of these updates. And frankly, especially with dealers and making sure that they're protecting that data from any kind of malware, and that sometimes some of these dealers really need to check their insurance policies because they think they have this coverage and, through PNC or other coverages. So, and then they find out that they don't. Can you kind of go into that for me?
Sure. So a lot of dealers, you'd be surprised to learn, Becky, they don't have any cyber coverage.
Really?
And that is a problem. Anecdotally, I know of a group, and I've confirmed it actually, originally heard it as a rumor, but recently confirmed it. They were ransomware for $7 million. So somebody took control of their systems, locked them out. They couldn't transact business. I don't know whether they had cyber insurance or not, but it was a $7 million claim, so I understand.
Well, James did mention that, yes, and I know we had that conversation, and I know that happened, and they were lucky that they actually did have that cyber insurance, but he said it's few and far between that actually do.
Yeah, and that's true. So some garage packages, so the main insurance package that you have that protects the dealership from liability, some garage packages throw in $250,000, but it's very insufficient in terms of what dealerships would need if they have a problem. That $250,000 generally will not cover ransomware. It's generally for expenses. It's kind of a very light version. And these insurance companies since January 1st have really gotten tough on what they're going to do with dealers. And as an example, I have a client who's with CDK. He has his email with CDK, and the insurance companies will not renew his cyber coverage because CDK, as of this date, does not have multi-factor authentication in place for their email. And as a result of that, we're looking for coverage right now because he obviously does not control CDK. You'd think a company that big, and I'm not trying to bash CDK, but I'm amazed that they don't have multi-factor authentication as a part of their email. but they don't, and as a result, the dealers having trouble renewing their cyber coverage. So this is all, the MFA, or the multi-factor authentication, is part of the new Gramm Leach Bliley regulations,
Okay.
which dealers have to comply with by December the 9th of this year, December the 9th of 2022. And this is one of the pieces that they're going to have to pay attention to.
So, we talk about some of that, dealers, and we know some, well, I had mentioned back, I think it was 2005, 2015, I don't know what year, 2015, red flag ruling. When did that come out?
Oh gosh, I think that's been out since, it might have even been the late 90s. I'm not
It's about 2005. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
A while.
It's been a while. So I remember when that first came out, and I remember how we were stumbling all over the place, and while we were trying to implement these safeguard rulings, and of course also red flag, and I don't think we were doing that great of a job with that whole idea. And
Sure.
making sure that, again, we implemented a compliance officer and what our duties and responsibilities were with that whole piece. So dealers I can't speak for every dealer, but I do know that some really weren't kind of
Paying
doing
attention.
what they were supposed to be doing. So I'm wondering here, are they going to be paying attention to these new updates?
Well, I was at a dealership group last week and went into their computer system just to check on the red flags rule. And there were plenty of X's where the F&I manager just blew right by it and to disclose the customer anyway. So for anyone who's watching and or listening, make sure you go back and you check to make sure that the red flag rule is being adhered to. And in the compliance world, Becky, as you well know, unless you're checking it, you don't know what's going on.
Well, I think it's important that we are doing our proper checks and balances. And some of this is not something that you can ignore. That, if there is a breach, from what I understand, and it's 1,000 more individuals, consumers that have been affected by that breach, that is something that has to be reported to FTC. And
Right.
This is right.
Right. Well, each of the dealerships is supposed to have a written data breach plan and what they would do and the specific steps of how they'd handle if they have a data breach. And again, that's something I find that a lot of dealerships, if you ask them for their data breach response plan, they kind of look at you and, I think it's over here somewhere, or that kind of thing. So it should really be the data breach response plan. That's something should be in the employee guidebook, and everybody should sign off on it, and everybody should know about it, and it should be very public, and everybody know what to do, so that if something happens, everybody knows to, go see whoever it is, because they're the ones handling it, and then they go through their step-by-step playbook.
It's really going to be interesting how this whole thing takes off with regard to these updates and what dealers are going to have to put in place. And, you also mentioned, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on, as you well know, historical amounts. And if in fact dealers aren't paying attention to make sure that they have their ducks in a row, that they're applying to compliance and regulation, that could possibly mean that they may not get the value that they were hoping for their stores. Would you talk a little bit through this and how that whole thing works?
Sure. Compliance, if you don't have a compliance program in place and a regulator or a lawyer, either one, come after the dealer, then it's going to be a situation where there's going to be willful noncompliance. And when there's willful noncompliance, the checks get very big. I've always said that, and when I say very big, I mean 6 figures. I know of multiple situations where regulators go in and it's six figures. However, if they come in and you say, here's all my compliance material, and here's my compliance manager, and here's what we do routinely, and here's the information on this, and here's the information on that, then you say, look, yes, we messed up with Mrs. McGillicuddy over here, and we'll get Mrs. McGillicuddy straight, but you can't say that we're being willfully non-compliant because we have all these procedures, and here's our employee guidebook, and here's our data breach response plan, and here's our compliance management system, and all those things that are required by the FTC and by all the rules and regulations because we're so highly regulated. So it's a matter of a couple $1,000s or a couple $100,000.
I mean, that's what I understand. I mean, dealers would tell me, it would always be like, okay, well, we have a problem. We'll just write that off as doing business, right? Cost of doing business. And now the cost of doing business is really going sky high. I mean, this is like, millions of dollars. And I don't know. I know these guys are making a bazillion dollars right now, but I don't think I'd want to go ahead and give that up anytime soon just because I can't seem to get my head wrapped around the updates on the Gramm Leach Bliley Act and making sure that we have our policy and procedures in place to assure that we're doing what we need to do to protect ourselves and the consumer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is complicated, and there's no one solution that I've seen yet that anybody said, here it is, and it's the total solution. You've got companies for example, that will send out contracts to your vendors to have them sign to make sure that your data between your website and any of your marketing companies is encrypted, and they sign and they agree to it. Well, that's certainly part of it. You have to have a written policy, and there's a software program that specifically does, you click the box and click the box and click the box, and ta-da, you have a policy. But then there's the whole tech side of it that has nothing to do with that, where you have to have endpoint detection, and you have to have the right antivirus, and you have to have a qualified individual who is supposed to be handling your tech. And the definition of a qualified individual, I haven't memorized it, but it's basically somebody who has a computer science degree. Like, I'm not a qualified individual. I'm a business consultant, but I couldn't pass as a qualified individual based on the rules and regulations and what they say. So you've got all these disparate pockets that the dealers are going to have to comply with, and this is not going to be one of those where somebody installs a software solution and says, you're good, don't worry about anything else.
You don't think so?
That's not how this is going to work. It might work that way with some other things, but not here.
Yeah, I know what you mean by that. Every time I turn around, we got this. Don't even worry about it. We're good. Forget about it. That's why I'm saying, when this whole red flag thing came up, it was like, everybody's like, oh my gosh, we got to get into the stores. We got to just make sure that these dealers are protected. And of course, then they came up with software program. Next thing you know, we're good to go. We got an OFAC pull, and, now we're happy. But then it really wasn't a deep dive as it should be. I mean, I know what actually should be happening in those stores that certainly really isn't happening, but that's beside the point. So I said, okay, no harm. So, okay, but now with this whole update, what does that exactly mean? And then it could mean if in the event, that customer has been violated, and then we sold, or the dealer happened to sell a car to a customer where their credit or identity has been breached.
Right.
Then there's UDAP laws and that sort of thing that go into play.
Right. Think about if the dealership has to buy credit monitoring for 20,000 people, right? What is it? Is it $100 per person or something?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not cheap. That's for darn sure. I mean, who would want to go do that? But
so, I mean, if there's a breach, that may be part of the settlement, and if you don't have insurance that would respond to that and perhaps provide that as part of the remediation, then 20,000 times 100 is $200,000, and that's just for the credit monitoring, which is kind of and again, it probably is a lot less than $100. I don't know how much it is. I haven't checked, but it's a lot of money when you in 20,000. By the way, part of the regulations say that you're only supposed to keep the data that you need for business purposes. Mm-hmm. And that means that 20-year-old service ROs and having those customers sitting in your CRM or on your DMS, you're supposed to have a data retention policy and get rid of that data if you're not using it. So the FTC is actually kind of shifting, and what they're saying now is data is a liability, and they want the dealerships to think of it as a liability. So 20,000 names, as you and I both know, is nothing in terms of what's actually in their database. And that data retention policy is certainly part of the, one of those other pieces that the dealers are going to have to worry about and make sure that it's taken care of.
Well, I'll tell you right now, coming from a dealer who has been in the car business for a very long period of time. I remember Kline when I was growing up in Maryland. I'm from Baltimore. And so we had a chance to get together. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, talk about a small world, Kline. I remember Kline Automotive. And it is certainly a pleasure, Tom, to have you here on the F&I Master Series, The Digital Age.
Thanks so much for having me, Becky.